Here's an experiment for you. Take passionate experts in human resource technology. Invite cross-industry experts from inside and outside HR. Mix in what's happening in people analytics today. Give them the technology to connect. Hit record. Pour their discussions into a beaker. Mix thoroughly. And voila, you get the HR Data Labs podcast, where we explore the impact of data and analytics to your business. We may get passionate and even irreverent, but count on each episode challenging and enhancing your understanding of the way people data can be used to solve real-world problems. Now, here's your host, David Turetsky.
Hello and welcome to the HR Data Labs podcast. I'm your host, David Turetsky. Like always, we try and find people inside and outside the world of human resources to bring you the latest on what's actually happening in the world of HR. Today, we have with us Katherine Boardman, who's the Chief People Officer at BlueConic. Hello, Katherine. How are you?
Hello. I'm doing well.
Katherine, give us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So after graduating college, I started off in human resources on the recruiting side of the house. My first two roles were I was working in very large companies, first in hospitality, then in professional services. And then from there, started my journey into technology, working with tech companies of varying sizes, and have found a niche in that sort of 100 to 300 person organization in SaaS. So, tech companies in that sort of software development, service focused, and have been thoroughly enjoying working with teams, growing teams, and just sort of all that comes with that, which sometimes is unpredictable, and we figure it out as we go.
Sometimes having a 100 to 300 person organization brings so many more challenges than are in those big organizations because you typically have a much smaller HR footprint. And so I've been in those situations and I loved it. It was a lot of challenge. We had to wear a lot of hats.
Indeed.
So Katherine, what is one thing that no one knows about you?
Oh, that's a good one. So I do a lot of hot yoga, and for people who haven't done hot yoga or have done some, I don't really notice the heat anymore, which makes absolutely no sense. You would think it's like, how can you not notice it? It's so hot and sweaty in there. And after a couple thousand practices, just doesn't really get to me, which is helpful when it's a hot summer day.
I'm sure it is. And I'm not going to make fun of Phoenix right now when I say, but it's a dry heat. It is not a dry heat in hot yoga, right?
It is not at all.
No. Because the intent is to sweat as much as possible, correct?
Exactly.
Now, for someone who doesn't do it, the one thing I could ask or want to ask is, aren't you slipping all over the place on your mats?
No. So the key to that is to have a yoga mat towel. So a towel that is the size of your yoga mat, that is crucial. Because if you don't, it would be a slip and slide experience and probably not a lot of fun, and you might get hurt. So always want to have that yoga towel on top of your mat.
The entrepreneur in me says, there might be a market there for a yoga mat towel combo.
And I think it may exist already.
Darn it.
But think about it. You're all sweaty. If you have the combo, then you have to wash the whole thing as opposed to just washing the towel.
One would ask, shouldn't that be happening anyways?
Yeah, probably.
Awesome. So on that note, our topic for today is the personal nature of remote work. I think that for many of us in the HR world who are struggling right now with remote versus hybrid versus fully back, we're kind of missing out on the personal nature of it. So let's get into it. From our conversations before, I understand that BlueConic is deciding to actually close its office in Boston, very close to where I am, and make a shift to remote first. What business decisions led to you making this decision?
What I love about the Workforce Agility Limited Series by Cornerstone was we talked to executives and customers all about skills. Skills, 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 skills. Cornerstone has a wonderful background in learning and development, training, etc. Their LMS is world class, but they've centered the business now, not just on that, like building upon that, but building upon how everything has moved to the skills economy. So check out the limited series called Workforce Agility, and you can get it wherever you get your podcast. And it's just a wonderful series where we talk to their executives on the shift of why, and also their customers that are using it. So check it out whenever you get a chance. Appreciate it.
So after or during the pandemic, people were home, they were working fully remote. When we reopened our office, we found that even though people had indicated through surveys that, yes, I want to be back in, I want to be working, sort of shoulder to shoulder in the same spaces, collaborating live with my teammates, that when we actually opened, far fewer people were coming in. That, in that sort of year, 18 months of really being, if it was that long, sort of working solo at home, or, just not in an office, that, people acclimated. They sort of reworked sort of the structure of their lives in any number of ways. And it fits. So they were used to that. So that's what led to our decision to close the office and to, take some space in a co-working space. So we still have a Boston presence. It's still our headquarters. It looks different right now.
Have you gotten any feedback on that balance of the work from home, work together, work in an office? Have you gotten any feedback now that you've made that decision where people feel strongly one way or another? Basically what I'm asking is, now that you've made the decision to go remote first, has anybody actually pushed back on it?
So people have been very clear that they want in-person time. And in sort of what the structure is now in terms of being, primarily remote, is that it's really focusing people on how do we work together, sort of what feels best. We have some teams who, we might have two members of a team who actually work very closely. One is in the U.S., one is in our Netherlands office. And they have found that they can be, super productive when they have in-person time together. And they have to, because most of the time they're not together in person, that when they're not, they need to really sort of structure and come up with ways to sort of how do we replicate that in-person time. So I think it's a much more sort of focused and deliberate way of looking at what works best. Some teams have always been remote. So continuing to work that way, utilizing Zoom, any number of technology tools. Slack is huge for people for sort of that real time sort of back and forth, which almost starts to look a little bit like a live conversation. But circling back, it's really that people want that meaningful in-person time.
Do you think it puts more pressure on that in-person time? Like, we had an offsite that was really an onsite a few weeks ago, and I think it definitely put more pressure on that time to make sure that it was as productive as possible so that we could take advantage of that, co-location and not, I don't want to say the word waste time, because even just being there together was actually very positive and very useful.
Yes. One of the primary benefits that I've seen to that, and even I feel it personally, to being with people in person and being in each other's presence is, there's an energy exchange. There are sort of organic conversations that pop up. So as much as, sort of we need to think about how do we structure in-person time. We have to be really deliberate about it. It's using that muscle, that organizational muscle on the part of leaders and managers and employees to say, okay, what does it look like? And then once we're together, how are we going to use that time? And I think it's critical for however sort of scheduled you're going to have that time for sort of the owner of that meeting or gathering to ensure that, there's social time at the end of the day, or you have breaks when people can just, hey, can I catch you in the hallway? And, oh, I had this idea. I mean, have to have opportunities to do that.
I don't know if you remember back to when we were always in the office. It seems it just seems forever ago. But it seems like, and I have this, I'll give you an analogy. When I lived in New York City, I always took it for granted that I lived in New York City. I didn't do touristy things. I did the things I had to do because, I was a busy person. I was a busy professional. I always had to be on the move. And so every once in a while I'd look around and go, this is really cool. I live in New York, but I never went to the Met. I never went to, the opera. I never did a bunch of things that I could have done. Do you think we have some of this grass greener stuff about what working in the office used to be like, where, we had that opportunity. We lived that for many, many decades. And, it's not very different now, is it?
I think there is maybe it's a recency bias, or I think we can look back at that always in office time and think about, gosh, how many hours were spent commuting? How much time was spent not really needing to think about sort of how am I going to meet up with this person? So there's been this shift. So in a lot of cases, people aren't commuting. Maybe it's not every day. Maybe they're commuting once or twice a week. So that time on the other end when they're at home, when they're remote, has been filled in with often some very meaningful activity, whether it's time with, for oneself, with family, with kids. And that really, we started to learn how to do that when we were all at home during the pandemic. So I think the pandemic sort of gave us a very shared experience around, this is so different. This is completely different from what I'm used to. I can't believe that I've now learned to work in this opposite way of how I worked before.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking subscribe. This podcast is made possible by Salary.com. Now, back to the show.
Let's transition a little bit and talk about what steps you're taking to remain true to the BlueConic culture and who you are as an organization.
So there, at the very sort of top of the list is making sure that we're conscious of what are all those pieces that make up our culture, how we communicate with one another, how we sort of think about, okay, if we have this new setup, which is an amazing opportunity, right? People can still be remote in a way that people really want to be now. It's how they want to work, while also offering opportunities to gather. So doing that, and then we do a lot, making sure that the way we communicate with people, that it's always in different formats. There's Slack announcements. There are emails from our CEO every Monday morning to kick off the week. There are, sort of structured, guidelines around how often, should you meet with your team. We use software. We use a platform that we can sort of put out agendas and take notes in our one-on-one. So best practice for managers is weekly or bi-weekly one-on-ones with each of their direct reports, so that that communication and connection it's constant, it's different, but it's always in play. And in doing that, in addition to biweekly stand-up meetings, smaller gatherings, even impromptu activities that we're reinforcing culture. And again, it's being mindful and really being very aware of what are those pieces that when you put it all together, all the ingredients, you end up with this wonderful, wonderful soup.
And not to go too much on that analogy, but I love soup. But who doesn't love soup? But to talk about it, are you constantly testing the soup to make sure that it still has the consistency and the formula that made it what it was? Meaning, have you done employee engagement studies? I know you talked about listening, but that's what managers should always have been listening. But have you listened to your managers to say, we're getting some productivity issues, we need to double down on this or that? What ways are you testing the soup?
Sure. So we do have our annual employment satisfaction survey coming up shortly in the fall. So, that we'll get some input and some benchmarks. How are we comparing to last year when the landscape was a little different? We have sort of these continuous feedback loops. So our people ops team has certainly regular sort of discussions and check-ins with managers, and sort of ongoing topic is, how are people doing? What are we hearing and seeing from people? One of the reasons I love an organization this size, the size of BlueConic, is that we are certainly large enough where we have, sort of our workforce it's dynamic. We have, sort of a lot of different folks playing different roles, wearing different hats. We also are not so large that we don't know what's up with folks. So we can also, is someone not really sort of checking in? Is there someone that seems sort of disengaged? And that's certainly one of our priorities, both as, the people operations and for leaders, to say, hey, you really, you have to use your eyes and your ears to really watch what's going on, because people they'll give you signals. Yes. And when if you think something's going on, something's likely going on. Right. So we have a responsibility. The responsibility goes both ways, though, because part of our, when I think about our values and culture, employees, our team needs to come also and say, hey, I'm having a challenge right now. Right. And that being able to do that, having that psychological safety it's part of our culture. It's part of who we are, that, we all show up as we're one person. We don't have this, I'm work Katherine and I'm home Katherine. I'm just Katherine. So really important to, kind of keep that in mind too, as we're all on this journey.
But that takes a level of maturity, Katherine, that I think for many employees, especially with remote work, they might find it challenging to raise their hand, given a lot of the mental health crises that we've been dealing with around, well, lack of a better way of saying it, people feeling emotional or disconnected or having just challenges with the complexity of what's going on in the day. I mean, this is just, every year we have new challenges, but the pandemic has driven significant challenges on a lot of fronts, like healthcare, home care, elder care, child care, lots of things, especially to women, and especially women of color, have faced tremendous pressures in not just returning to work, because many of them left the workforce during the pandemic, but also their ability to feel comfortable and reaching out. Do you think, and hopefully this isn't a curveball that you're not anticipating, but hopefully in your culture, in the BlueConic culture, people feel that ability and that maturity to actually raise their hand, and whether it's with their bosses or with the HR or employee relations group, to actually be able to be that brave, I guess is the question.
Yes. I think, David, I look when I think about sort of the employee, the journey, the life cycle, and it starts from that very first initial point of contact. Often that is, someone has applied for a role here,
Right.
and the very first conversation or email that they receive is from someone on our talent team. So our talent team, our recruiters are, as they engage with potential future Blue Crewers, are doing two things. They are certainly assessing, does this person have skills, experience that, would satisfy what we need in this role that's open. Also, relaying to the candidate as they engage with us who we are and what type of sort of organization and community they will be joining. They're joining a community if they start here. Certainly it was my own experience when I was, first email I received from someone on our talent team. And I think it's for the talent team, it's sort of having a commitment to connecting with each person that is a candidate. And that takes a lot. There are certainly, they could just be sort of checking boxes, but their commitment, again, coming back to our values and our culture, is that future employee, or at least that candidate, even if they don't move forward, is having an experience that aligns with what, wow, that is a place that I would feel safe to be who I am, and that would have my back if something were going on. So even if it's not sort of stated in a way that's, here's what you can be here, I think people with the written words, with what we're saying, and then the experience are getting that. And I think that's vitally important for organizations now that's the work, is how do we as leaders, how do we as HR teams sort of adapt and make sure that we are taking care.
Well, we've seen some very famous examples of how companies are not that interested in the mental health / the investments that people have had to make to stay employed and to dedicate to a company, and then they see their return on the investment, or their lack thereof, from their organization that they've been working for. So, you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's not. I wish many more organizations, especially were more public, like BlueConic is, but I wish more organizations were more caring / created an employee value proposition that you seem to be living, which is, we care about you as much as we want you to be productive. We care about you. Right. That's just, it's not the way things have gone. In fact, I think there was something on the news this morning. Of course, it was only a flyby from the news perspective, that there was a study done on, I think it was an Indian call center recently, which said that, in the headline was, employees are 18% less productive remote. And I laughed. I was like, this is called lies, damn lies, and statistics, because you're not telling me, what was the sample size, what was the time frame, all that other stuff. Your big headline here is employees are 18% less productive at okay, great. Thank you. That's very useful to put out there. Hey, are you listening to this and thinking to yourself, man, I wish I could talk to David about this? Well, you're in luck. We have a special offer for listeners of the HR Data Labs podcast. A free half-hour call with me about any of the topics we cover on the podcast, or whatever is on your mind. Go to salary.com/HRDL consulting to schedule your free 30-minute call today. Let's talk a little bit about some examples you might be able to provide, some good examples of the type of activities and investments that BlueConic makes to make those meaningful, impactful interactions. You talked a little bit about having a workspace, like a co-workspace someplace. What are the other investments you're making?
Sure. So we have, for some time, when folks have joined the crew, Blue Crew, and that's great. Right? It's great. I love it. Blue Crew.
Wonderful.
So we have for everyone Headspace memberships. So, sort of again, you're the only one who can take care of you. But I can give you some tools. And I think part of when we offer tools, and similarly to when I was talking about the different modes of communication and formats for how we sort of bring information to people, share knowledge, not everything fits everybody. We're a multicultural company. We're based in the U.S. We were founded in the Netherlands. We have a team in the Netherlands, a couple other locations. So, and we are richer for it, but not everyone likes the same thing. So between the Headspace app and making sure that we are kind of our benefits fit who we are now. So that means that we're promoting our EAP. We are making sure that when we do catch wind of someone's having a struggle, there's outreach. One of our people ops managers or specialist is reaching out and connecting with people. So there are those pieces. We also are, depending on sort of what the kind of time of year is, we'll recognize, for instance, Pride Month with, of drag bingo. We have a book club. We have a bi-monthly book club. So it's always nonfiction titles. And we have read books such as Culture Map by Erin Meyer, which is a phenomenal resource. And that's another opportunity both to get people together, but also to have sort of a topic to sort of center on, to anchor on, that we can then think about, okay, how does this apply to us? How do, whether it's work styles, Atomic Habits was another recent read. So, which then is, there are takeaways from that. So, okay, now I have some skill building. I can, some tools to use. Right. So we do that. And then we have learning and development opportunities every quarter. That could be small group. That will also be all staff. So again, a lot of variety so that over the course of a month, a couple of months, everyone is getting a number of opportunities to sort of learn, maybe gain some perspective that they didn't have, sort of a little bit of opening minds a little bit more. Right. And a shout out to Coffee and Donuts, which is just a great way to get paired up with someone that you don't know and on another team and spend 20 minutes together and just share and figure out where am I going to travel to on vacation next and how do you take your coffee?
That's a great idea. Those are really great ideas. I love the book club idea as well. I read a few books just recently that, not to give too many examples, but there's a couple of great books on inclusive leadership and inclusive language. One by Jackie Ferguson, the other one by Jackie Brown. The inclusive language book by Jackie Ferguson is actually an incredible eye-opener. I got emotional reading it because there are some things in here that language we use every day, we don't realize it could be hurting people. And so when I talk to people inside of salary.com, I talk to them about reading this book, not just because it's a good book and it's a very quick read, but because it gives us an opportunity to sit in someone else's seat or actually walk in their shoes and understand, what from their perspective, the language that you're using, not you personally, right, could be better. And then the inclusive leadership book by, Jennifer Brown, wonderful book on how to think differently and how to act as a leader by thinking about how other people perceive you. Wonderful books. And by the way, both phenomenal guests of our podcast as
Great.
Well. But anyway, so my point is that I love the idea because when we start looking at other people's perspectives and talking to them, I think even more remotely than we did, because as I said before, I think we have a very hard time when we're co-located making optimal use of the co-location time. But really, when you get that opportunity to reach out to people and talk to people internally, when you have those moments, it just seems like it's such a great use of time and a great use of the space that you create for appreciation.
Right, right. I think that, when a Zoom call starts and you have that first minute or two before you just dive right into the topic, to the whole reason that you're having the Zoom in the first place, there
Right.
is in that minute or two, the very natural, sort of activity that we do is a little bit of small talk. And often through that, whether it's talking about the weather or,
Right.
sort of your favorite sports team, or it's, sort of, oh, you're just back from vacation. How was it? Oh, yes, Portugal was phenomenal. Thanks.
Right.
You find those sort of commonalities. And again, we're a community. So organizations are, I think when you look at them through or apply the lens of community to them and think about we all are part of any number of communities in
Right.
our lives, our neighborhood, a gathering place, a school, and our workplace. So even when we're remote, there is an opportunity. And I think we, back to the earlier sort of thoughts about when we were in the office 5 days a week, we do need to be more mindful now about how that, oh, I have this opportunity with this person for a half hour. We'll still spend 25 minutes talking about the topic at hand. I was in a meeting this morning and we started off the first 5 minutes talking about electric bikes, and I'd seen an electric mountain bike with these huge tires. So it was just, and again, and out of that, I'm like, oh, so that person over there, she just got a mountain bike. Isn't that cool? Or she got an electric bike. And
Right.
yeah.
Great ideas for us because, for example, without talking to my crew, without talking to the people I work with, I didn't know that most of them actually play hockey just like me. And we're, when we get to the office at one point, we're going to try and get a group together to get out on the ice and play together, which, hopefully from an insurance perspective, we're covered. But no, but seriously, it just drives so much colloquialism. No, what's the word?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one.
That thing. Yeah. It drives so much commonality. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
So, and that's at the end of the day, when we're remote and, we feel kind of lonely, it would be nice to actually remember those moments that or just chat somebody up on Slack or on Teams and say, hey, do you have a moment? Now, the other question I wanted to ask you, Katherine, is do you use ESGs still, or ERGs, the employee resource groups?
Right. So we have a DEIMB council. We have not yet launched ERGs. That's certainly on our roadmap. And we sort of later in the year, certainly as this idea of community, and I think the evolution of an organization, of a company, sort of another sort of roadmap target for us is sort of bringing structure around. It's going to be called Blue Crew in the community. So, sort of that, there's a lot of, and I think this existed before, certainly in organizations that I have been. And I think the pandemic shone, an even brighter light on being in one's community around where one lives, opportunities to volunteer, recognizing that there are people that don't have enough to eat. And, how do we, whether it's volunteering at a food pantry, but sort of that, really recognizing that and saying, now we have a responsibility as individuals. And I think we have, there's some power in being a, larger than a party of one to kind of go out into the community, whether it's to kind of work on clean up a playground or paint in a homeless shelter.
Sure.
All those opportunities. So we're going to put some structure around that in the coming months so that we can kind of help folks, and whether it's here in Boston or, certainly throughout the U.S., in states where we have folks and into the Netherlands, and it will take different shapes and forms in different areas. But I think that's another way that we progress along. And again, connection points, interests that people have, and things that are just, certainly both passion projects, but that are really sort of dear to people.
I'll never forget the time I spent with ADP where we did Habitat for Humanity. And the people from the Marlborough office, we went to Worcester and helped build someone's home. Never forget that experience. And I still have the pictures and, and the friendships and, the deepening of the relationships that we had with that group. It was wonderful.
Yeah, that's great.
Katherine, thank you so much for joining the HR Data Labs podcast. It was really wonderful to finally have you on the show.
Thank you so much. It's been great to spend this time with you, David.
And thank you for sharing all your learnings from the BlueConic journey that you've been on with remote work. We really do appreciate it.
Sure thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for listening. Take care and stay safe.
That was the HR Data Labs podcast. If you liked the episode, please subscribe. And if you know anyone that might like to hear it, please send it their way. Thank you for joining us this week, and stay tuned for our next episode. Stay safe.